June 4th, 1942. Four Japanese aircraft carriers slice through the Pacific on their way to Midway. But this time, something's different. Each ship is topped with spinning radar dishes, technology that won't exist for another 40 years. Blips appear on glowing green screens, hundreds of kilometers away. The Japanese aren't sailing blind anymore. In the real Battle of Midway, Japan's fleet had almost no radar capability. They relied on visual scouts and radio intercepts, methods that left them practically deaf in the open ocean. Meanwhile, the United States had codebreakers who already knew where the Japanese were going. When the American planes arrived, the Japanese carriers were refueling, decks packed with bombs and fuel lines. A perfect target. Within minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 carriers were burning. But let's twist history. What if the Imperial Japanese Navy had modern radar? Not the crude sets of the 1940s, but something from the 1980s. Systems able to detect aircraft 200 kilometers away, track dozens of targets at once, and guide interceptors right to them. Every incoming squadron, every stray scout plane, every blip in the sky, all visible long before it reached visual range. At dawn, the Japanese radar operators spot faint dots racing toward them from the northeast. American bombers. An alarm sounds across the decks. Pilots sprint to their planes. Crews clear the decks, and anti-aircraft guns swing skyward. Instead of being ambushed, Japan is now the side lying in wait. Historically, the U.S. torpedo bombers attacked first, slow, low, and doomed. With radar, they'd be intercepted long before reaching the carriers. Zero fighters climbed to meet them, guided by radar vectors instead of visual spotting. The American torpedo squadrons are wiped out even faster, without forcing the Japanese to scatter their defenses. This single change removes the opening the dive bombers later exploited. Now, when the U.S. dive bombers arrive, the Japanese fleet isn't refueling. Planes are already airborne, decks are clear, and the fleet is maneuvering defensively. The famous moment, 3 American squadrons appearing out of the clouds to destroy the Kaga, Akagi, and Soryu, never happens. Instead, Japan's carriers survive the first wave almost untouched. The Americans lose hundreds of planes without sinking a single ship. With their carriers intact, Japan launches a massive counterattack. Radar tracks the retreating American squadrons, revealing the approximate position of the U.S. carriers. Guided strike groups head straight for them. At this point, the U.S. still has radar, but in 1942, it's primitive, short-ranged, and often unreliable at sea. The Japanese planes arrive first. Bombs and torpedoes tear through the Yorktown and Enterprise. The Battle of Midway. Once America's turning point becomes a disaster. So what happens next? With Midway destroyed and America's carrier fleet crippled, Japan temporarily regains control of the Pacific. Supply lines to Australia and the South Pacific tighten. Guadalcanal might never happen in 1942. Japan could even fortify its perimeter, forcing the Allies into a slower, bloodier campaign later. But radar doesn't win wars by itself. Even with modern detection, Japan still faces the same problems. Limited fuel, weak logistics, and no way to replace lost pilots quickly. American industry would still crank out new carriers and planes faster than Japan could shoot them down. And crucially, the U.S. still held the code-breaking advantage, knowing where Japan would strike next. Radar might delay defeat, but not prevent it. In the end, modern radar would have turned Midway into a much more even fight, or maybe even a Japanese victory. But the deeper issue wasn't who saw whom first. It was who could keep fighting afterward. So the real question isn't, could radar have saved Japan at Midway? It's, could anything have saved an empire already running out of time? If Japan had radar that day, would history have changed forever, or just taken a little longer to reach the same ending? What do you think?